What most people don't realize is at the time, the Dallas Cowboys were losing $75,000 a day, over $1 million a month, and on top of that, the team was 3-13. The stands were half empty. The preceding newspaper articles had been about firing Coach Landry because the team was so bad. And 13% of the Dallas Cowboys was owned by the FDIC. We really were America's team, like way before private equity, like we really were. And so it was a disaster financially. So when he's like, what do you think? My first thought was, you're crazy.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of SBJ's On Stage. As always, I'm your host, Taylor Bloom. This episode is a real treat. It's not every day you get the Jones siblings on stage together, especially when they're this candid and this entertaining. Recorded on September 17th, 2024 at SBJ's Axis Drive event in Frisco, Texas, this conversation features Charlotte Jones, Chief Brand Officer, Jerry Jones Jr., Chief Sales and Marketing Officer, and Steven Jones, Chief Operating Officer of the Dallas Cowboys. Moderated by SBJ publisher and executive editor Abe Madkour, the conversation is packed with insight into how the Jones family runs the most valuable franchise in sports, covering everything from brand strategy to family dynamics, fan engagement, and future growth. It's fun, sharp, evergreen, and full of key takeaways. Let's go on stage.
Thank you so much for doing this. We appreciate it.
Great to be here.
How great do we love being here at the Star in Frisco? Not a bad place. I mean, this place is special, and I was telling you, over in the Omni, every touch that I see, I think that Charlotte had something to do with every little element in every little room.
So, it might be true.
It might be true. It's a beautiful facility.
We're glad you're here.
We're glad to be here. All right, let's have some fun, shall we?
Yeah.
All right. You've been in this business a long time. We heard some great stories from your dad last night. And so let's start from the beginning. Steven, I'll start with you maybe. Like, where did it start when he called you to say, I'm going to buy this team and I need your help?
Oh, wow. That was a long time ago. I was actually working in our oil and gas business, which we're still involved in to this day. I was actually a chemical engineer in college, so I thought I was going to be in the oil field all my life. And we were actually out in Southern California selling gas to PG&E. And one of the things I like to do, it was one of those conferences, not like this one, which is exciting and about sports and action, but this was just selling natural gas. So he got bored in a hurry, and he said, let's go to Cabo. And I said, well, that sounds like fun. And we took one of their guys, and Mike McCoy loaded up, went to Cabo, and I love to deep sea fish. He doesn't like to get in a boat that rocks. So he sent me out alone. I go out, have a great time, catch some fish, come back, and he goes, you're not going to believe this. And of course, I played college football. He played college football. He said, the Dallas Cowboys are for sale. And I go, that's great. So what? And he goes, we're selling our business here, our natural gas business. And he said, we're going to do pretty good on this thing. He goes, I think I want to take a look. And I go, are you serious? And he goes, yeah, he's go, get your stuff loaded up. We're going to fly to Dallas. And he had already called Jim Francis, who was the lead negotiator for Bum Bright at the time. And of course, it was rough times, 88 and 89. And you would think, they wouldn't need somebody from Arkansas to come down and maybe kick around at the Dallas Cowboys. But unfortunately, Dallas, whether it was oil and gas, whether it was real estate, they were on a need. And a lot of the individuals here. So he sure enough had it set up. And of course, I didn't know the first thing really about business. I think I was 24 years old. And of course, my eyes are that big around walking in here. And he said, look, we're sincerely interested. And they went through some of the numbers and things. And of course, the next step was to go back and get his negotiating team together, our CFO and the accountants. And the rest is history. I mean, there we go, negotiating the deal. And, of course, I'll never forget when he called, and Charlotte and Jerry will have their story, but he called me and said, what do you think? And I said, are you kidding me? I'm living in Fort Smith in a one-bedroom apartment, looking at a bunch of PDP and pressure graphs on oil and gas wells, or I can go down and be a part of football again and be a part of the Cowboys. I'm on my way.
Decision, right?
2 seconds. So that was my side in terms of how we found out and kind of how things got started a little bit in terms of my view of things.
And you were in Washington, right?
Yes, I was in Washington, D.C. Jerry was up there too at Georgetown.
Right, you were at Georgetown.
Yeah, and our meeting was a little different than that. He called and he said, you know, I want to come up and show you what I'm looking at with the Cowboys. And he literally came to Washington. Jerry's stories a little precedes that he'll share, but you know, he kind of laid everything out, and I don't think what most people don't realize is at the time, the Dallas Cowboys were losing $75,000 a day, over $1 million a month, and on top of that, the team was 3-13. The stands were half empty. The preceding newspaper articles had been about firing Coach Landry because the team was so bad. And 13% of the Dallas Cowboys was owned by the FDIC. We really were America's team, like way before private equity, like we really were. And so it was a disaster financially. So when he's like, what do you think? My first thought was, you're crazy. Like you shouldn't be doing that. And he did not have the support of his financial advisors, attorneys. I mean, this was not a great deal. It was certainly a passion play on his part. And then for us, after that, I joined a little bit later. Stephen had jumped down here immediately, and it was about a year after that. Actually, my first job with the Cowboys while I was still in Washington is he called and he said, we need somebody to take Troy Aikman to New York for the draft. Yeah, like, count me in. And so Stephen and I went with Lee Steinberg. We flew Troy up to New York, and you talk about, that was Troy Aikman then, you know, the mullet, you know, the business in the front, the party in the back, guy out of Oklahoma. He was very much that guy. We took him to Phantom of the Opera, we took him to dinner, and then we actually got to sign the card to make him the first pick of the draft. So
that's
pretty
fun.
neat moment.
That is great. And you were at Georgetown.
Well, I was at Georgetown, and as Charlotte mentioned, one thing I remember the most, without trying to get too redundant on what they've said, we were sitting in her apartment, which was there on the Potomac at Washington Harbor, where she lived at the time. And we were up there for President George H.W.'s inauguration. And he, to Dad's credit or to his belief in us doing things as a family, he really wanted buy-in from all of us, even though I was in college, Stephen and Charlotte right out of college. But I remember him saying, you know, if this doesn't work, we won't have to sell our house in Little Rock. And at least we'll have that if it doesn't work. And so he was sitting there evaluating it that way. And I know a lot of this group's heard him speak a lot, but passion, he just knew he'd figure out how to make it work.
You have to tell the story of who you were with.
Well, so that was there at an inauguration there in end of February, or mid-February, and so he had called me a couple of weeks before that, realizing that the discussion Stephen mentioned with Jim Francis and Mr. Bright, that he thought this was gonna happen, and I was like I said, a freshman at Georgetown, and I had actually been at the library, a real library, studying, got home about, I don't know what, it was 11 o'clock midnight. And back in those days, they had the answer machine with the glowing number on there, and I had a message, and so I hit play, it rewound, and there was Dad's voice, and he said he'd just gotten through with his meeting with Bum Bright, and said, I wanted you to be the first to know that we've just bought the Dallas Cowboys. And I hear my mom in the background go, don't tell him on the answer machine, we got to tell him in person. And today, I still wish I had that tape. I had no idea what we were about to jump into. I don't think any of us did, and where our future was going and the impact of being involved in the NFL and the Dallas Cowboys was going to be, but that tape would be pretty priceless today.
Yeah.
There's also a current owner who was with you.
Who were you?
Greg.
And so, well, I don't ever know which story you're trying to tell, but so there, around that library and all of that, one of my good friends at that time happened to be Greg Penner, who was sitting there today with Kerry Walton, now owns the Denver Broncos.
Interesting.
I'd say this with Greg sitting here. So my roommate at the time, we had a mutual roommate who had asked Kerry out a couple of times, and so she didn't want any interest. And so he called me up after Greg and Kerry bought the Denver Broncos, my roommate did, and said, I knew if Vince said, I knew if Teddy would have done a better job of asking Kerry out, I'd be the only guy in the whole world that could say my 2 roommates own NFL teams. Eddie didn't do his part, Jerry.
I love it. And you also said one of your favorite wins, of all the wins that you've seen of the Cowboys in the organization, one of your favorite wins was when you were in Washington, right?
Well, that was 1989. Those that are good revisionists know that we were 1-15 that season. We had 1 victory that first year, and we had no turnovers, no penalties, and we won the game 13-10. But it was in RFK, and that was a good place to win. But our family and Jerry Sr., great friends with Prince Bandar, the ambassador of the U.S. for Saudi Arabia. And we had gotten to know him actually when we first bought the team. Jim Francis, who we mentioned earlier, called up Dad and said, I need you to go to dinner. I'm going to take you to meet Prince Bandar of Saudi Arabia. He's going to be your new best friend. He happens to be the biggest Dallas Cowboy fan in the world. And at that time, we didn't have, Sunday ticket and satellite, but they would, Prince Bandar over in Saudi Arabia would send fighter jets to come pick up a VCR tape to fly back to Saudi Arabia so he could watch the game. That's how big a fan he was. But we'd gotten to know him, so when we won that game, he called up my dad and said, tell Jerry Jr. if it's not safe up here, because he's obviously at the embassy there in Washington, D.C. He said, if it's not safe around here, tell him he can seek asylum over here at the embassy with me.
Good stuff. So what I've always been really admired, and I've heard this from other people in the industry, is you all know your areas of interest and focus, and you seem to really dive into the areas within the organization that you love to be involved in. Like Stephen, I knew football was part of your thing, and you were first general counsel, and you've always been about the brand. Talk a little bit about the roles and the way you communicate amongst your respective responsibilities.
Well, you want me to go?
Sure.
Like this. Huh, should I do it?
Right,
You
right,
did it?
right.
I'll get it. What I think is the best thing about working with our family, and I know my father, if he didn't say it last night, he would be up here saying it today, is that this is the greatest byproduct of being involved in something like the Cowboys, is to get your family engaged in it. And I think, for us, I think we recognize where our talent is, and we have such a tremendous amount of respect for each other that it's an easy handoff when something comes up of like whose part is this. And for me, as you mentioned, my area has always been about the brand, and I think have a little bit of a creative mind. Steven's more analytical and financial, and Jerry Jr. is actually a great combination of both of that. And we've all kind of been able to evolve. My father's leadership style is maybe not one that anybody should repeat, but he believes in blurred lines. So he wants each of us to know everything about everything. So then in the event we need to, or in a situation that we need to make decisions where others are not around us, that we certainly have the knowledge and the expertise to be able to do so. That we've allowed ourselves to be the best version of ourselves, and I think that's what's made it.
And I read something he told you a lot. I think he told all three of you. Ambiguity. Get used to it. It's going to be out there. What did he mean by that in your mind?
I think there's never going to be clear-cut answers to anything. At the end of the day, everybody likes to use the term these days, disruption. And, I think that's the way it's been since we bought the team. I mean, it's evolved. I mean, there weren't sponsorships. People didn't own their stadiums. I mean, things have evolved over time. And, I think his number one message that always resonated with me, that as a family, we want to leave the Dallas Cowboys, any part of them, whether it's a stadium, whether it's your practice facility and what a practice facility is, you want to leave it, or a football team. By the way, it never fails. I come do something like this, and we happen to get our butt kicked the Sunday before, so trying to smile a little bit here today. But but you want to leave it in a better place. And same thing with the football team. We won the championships early, and that was outstanding, winning 3 Super Bowls. But obviously, you look at the stadium. We had an amazing stadium at Texas Stadium where God could look at his team through the hole. You look at AT&T Stadium, it's something that everybody sitting right here. And then, of course, one of the great things, I see a lot of our top executives here. We got so many great people in our organization that execute on the ideas, whether it's Jerry, whether it's Charlotte, Jerry, and I, they execute on those ideas, and without them, it wouldn't happen. But the big thing is leave it in a better place than where you found it. And that constantly challenges you every day to stay ahead of things. And it's always interesting. And it's not just necessarily the football arena. I mean, you got to look at what Premier Soccer's doing. You got to look at what the NBA's doing. I mean, you look at an Intuit Arena that Bomber just did, and I can't wait to go in it because I've heard so many amazing things about it. And if we're going to keep up, because the most important thing about the Dallas Cowboys is fandom, is the fans, not only around the Cowboys, but around our league. But, you know, there's so many moving parts and people say, well, how do y'all all get along together and how do you work? There's just so much to do. And then, of course, you know, it's no secret that we're involved in other businesses, which I'm very involved in our oil business and real estate business. But that all, believe it or not, especially the real estate, has so much to do with what the Star is all about, so much to do about what AT&T is all about. So, you know, it's an interesting way that we manage, and it's ambiguity. It's a little bit managed chaos at times, if you will. But the most important thing is whatever we do in business, we should leave it in a better place than where we found it.
One of the quotes I saw in my research, and I think he'd always tell you, in the early days was, we got to turn this around and don't mess with the Star, or don't ever impact or burnish the Star, right? I mean, it was always about the brand. And so that stuck with you from more than 30 years.
Yes, and boy, does Jerry Senior, does he preach it. And, you know, right when he first bought the team, he was riding with Tex Schramm, and he was in the car with him, and he said, boy, Tex, just what you've done with the Dallas Cowboys and what you've built, history, the tradition, you and Coach Landry. He goes, it's just amazing what the Cowboys represent. And Tex Schramm looked over at Jerry and said, you know, Jerry, this would be a great business if we didn't have to play those football games. Dad paused and kind of looked at him. He said,
You'll know.
And so going forward, that resonated so strongly with Dad, that has been his approach, that anytime we do anything, and of course, you know, be it here like you see at the Star, the Omni Hotel here, when you do the association, and it transcends from sponsorships over to business partnerships, but you're truly trying to take advantage of an uneven playing field, and that's called the NFL and the Dallas Cowboys, to leverage something and try to tap into those passions of what a team is doing. Well, every time we do something like that, he's there to remind our whole organization, not just us, but all of our executives, everybody, that you're choosing when you do something like build this hotel, or choose to do something like building Cowboys Club, or go to build the Star in general. You're signing up to play a football game. And you didn't have to sign up to play that football game, but if you've signed up to play it, you have to win. And so because if you don't, you tarnish the Star. And so that's where we go every day thinking, okay, if we're going to do this, we've got to do it first class. We got to do it the Cowboys way. We got to do it the best of our abilities, and we've got to figure out how to win that game.
Last night, he talked about going against the wind in his career and always trying to think differently. I think he had pretty much everybody in that room willing to run through a wall for him after he spoke. And then Sunday watching him, like, I've been to a lot of NFL games, and I've never seen an owner kind of connect with either partners, friends, sponsors, the way your dad does. Obviously, it's intentional. And he's making time, and like every photo, every connection, that's rare. And so you must have seen that. That's important to him, obviously.
I think we certainly all learn from that. When I say all, our whole group that is here today as well, is that you know, your fans, your clients, your customers, they're smart, and it's really about authenticity. And how do you really make that authentic connection with the people that you're working with, and that will help you to make your business successful. And he personally is so passionate about everything that he does and about the people involved, and he knows that without those people, each one of them there, in whatever capacity that they're there for, as a sponsor, as a fan, whatever it might be, that we would not be here if it were not for them. And so that effort to get out and to know who they are and to bring them along in this journey is really, it's authentic, it's real. And there's probably not anybody that works harder than he does, but it's certainly infectious. And I think for all of us, we feel the same way about it. It's personal.
Yeah. You bring up, the sideline. There was Mike Tyson down
Right.
there. Someone said, well, you're just having celebrities. Well, there's a method to the madness. He's got Mike Tyson and Jake Paul down there because we're going to host them fighting each other. And he said, we get the hype going, and then we fill up AT&T Stadium on a fight that a lot of people said more of a promoter thing than it is a real fight. But it's going to be one of our top events at AT&T Stadium. So it gets everybody looking at those guys. They become aware of the fight. And here you go. We're talking about Jerry, and, one of the things that he's all about, and Abe, I saw in your notes, you mentioned you wanted to hear about the Johnny Manziel story, but this tells you all you need to know about having Jerry as your dad. So it's the Johnny Manziel draft, and of course everybody's heard the story that we eventually passed on Johnny Manziel, but going into the draft, Jerry was so intrigued. I mean, Johnny football in your own backyard from Texas, an Aggie, everything that you can think about, and he could just picture him wearing a Cowboy star. And he was so fired up about the prospects, but at the time, everybody thought Johnny Manziel would be a top 5 pick. So we're sitting in there the morning before the draft, and, he said, are there any things here that were not on the page? And I go, well, I don't know that we're all on the page on Johnny Manziel, Dad. I said, I don't think we are. Well, let's don't even worry about that. He's going in the top 5. We don't even have to think about it. So let's don't have that anxiety and that angst and that confrontation. And I said, well, said you wanted to bring it up before we got in a room full of everybody, but, hopefully, I go, there's word that he may be falling, but if you don't want to talk about it right now, then we won't talk about it. So, boy, we get in that draft. And unfortunately, our coaching staff had done their homework, and this is nothing against Johnny Manziel. He's a great competitor. And it's just, do you use your first-round pick? And, of course, we had Tony Romo in the building. And so it was more about that. Do you create that kind of anxiety, in the organization by bringing him in? Well, sure enough, Johnny Manziel falls to us. And, boy, we get to go on. Well, let's talk about Johnny. Here he is. We got our guy. This is the future. And, of course, everybody in the room, I look around. I go, it's time for everybody to talk. And I look, and everybody's... I go, what? I go, Jason?
Nobody wanted to say that.
Larry Lacewell? Even Larry, who talks all the time, straight down at the floor. And I go, Dad, this is a hard thing because everybody knows you want Johnny, but I go, as you heard some of the things, I don't think he's the right guy for us. And so roll the clock forward, we end up picking Zach Martin. And boy, it is tense. Usually after every pick, we all know we're clapping, high-fiving. Boy, isn't that a great pick. Boy, after we picked Zach Martin, an offensive guard from Notre Dame, Jerry looks over at me, slaps me on the leg, and he goes, son, I didn't get to buy the Dallas Cowboys. We're not sitting here because you do down the middle of the road things. He goes, what you just did is down the middle. You'll never be great, huh? He gets off and stormed out, and boy, Larry Lace was sitting over there, and Jason's sitting there, and they're going, ooh, I'm glad that wasn't me. And then as soon as he walked out the door, but they said, thank you for standing up for taking Zach Martin. Sure enough, Jerry walks back in, which is typical Jerry. That was way over the top. I love you. We did the right thing.
Is that right?
And then we re-celebrated Zach Martin. So that's what it's like a little bit having Jerry. You got to every now and then. Charlotte's had to do it. Jerry's had to do it. We've all had to have those moments where he's wanting to do something that's into the wind, Abe, as you said, or outside the lines, or disruptive, whatever you want to call it. But he's the best. He's absolutely wonderful to work for, and even better father. And we've had we're having a hell of a run and going to have more of one, hopefully.
I just said on Zach Martin, we did this thing. Do you remember the mean tweets by Jimmy Fallon when he used to read this? So Zach gets up and reads this mean tweet, and he's like, Zach Martin, taking Zach Martin in the first round is like getting a pair of old socks for Christmas. Something that you really need and something you definitely do not want.
It's good.
Who tells him?
Still here.
Who is the one has to go tell him bad news? Tough news.
Well, I think that's evolved over time.
We know who it's not.
Well, I can tell you, when we were growing up, prior to business life and Cowboys, but as a family, when there was something we knew wasn't going to sit that well with him, and we knew there was a little controversy, Steve and I always volunteered Charlotte to go speak to him because he couldn't get too mad at his sweet little girl. So we always had Charlotte doing that. So that always still rings right up there.
I was also his card partner. I was everything. Y'all never. I was always sentenced to the
So then as we evolved and professionally, and then I was right out of law school of SMU, and then I was our first general counsel, and I see Jason Cohen sitting over here, our current general counsel, and thank God it's your job today and not mine. But after about not even that long, 2 or 3 years, that I was general counsel and head of player programs, and about that time we were going through some Michael Irvin issues down at the courthouse. And I'm having to grab Rich Dalrymple, our ex-PR, our former PR director. But it seemed like every time I was walking into Dad's office, I either had a lawsuit that we had an issue with, or that we had sat there and had a player like that had an issue. And just, boy, the fire that was coming out of his ear and the smoke and the madness. And I got so tired of the, call it an ass chewing, if you will. But I went in the room and I said, you can't win this battle. So I said, I'm going to go over to sales and marketing. That's what I'm going to. I want to come in there and tell them how much we just sold this for or that for. And so I got into sales and marketing real quickly. So I got out of that business. So I passed on that. But probably, I don't know where you three sit, but probably Stephen is the one that's probably hitting the brunt of the bad news these days.
All right. He's the oldest, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So
when we were building the Star.
It truly does depend on the topic.
It does.
It does.
And I think everybody has, everybody, you gotta have confrontation. We had a great coach through here, Bill Parcells, and I think, unfortunately, Jerry learned even more from him how good confrontation can be. But no, you gotta have it. I mean, Jerry has his, Charlotte has hers, and at the end of the day, it's very, it's very productive and helpful to go through things that aren't easy and that are challenges, and we have our share of those, and we get some of them right, we get some of them not so right.
I've got to tell this story on Stephen. So the Star, which we're all sitting here and everybody's getting to see what it represents, but when this first started back in 2013, so over 10 years ago, that the city approached us, and so we get going through it. Well, at the time, Dad, he had no appetite. He had, as you heard earlier, gone all in, pushed the chips when he bought the team in '89. He swore he'd never do it again. Then along came the stadium, 2008, 2009, worst depression and crisis our country's ever seen. And here we are, 50 feet in the ground, spending $1 million a day in our whole AMBAC auction rate securities, go down the pipe, no financing. Anyway, dancing with the devil, as he calls it. So he'd done that twice, somehow come up for breath both times, and here comes this project called the Star. And he'll say this publicly, and he might have said it last night, Abe, but he wanted no part of it. And Charlotte and Steve and I, boy, did we want part of it, because everything that he had taught us about leveraging the brand, using that to sit there and where 1 and 1's more than 2, be it 3 or 4, however you want to count it up. But boy, it was what he had taught us. And we sat there, the three of us, and so this is everything that we're about. We need to do the Star. We've got these great opportunities. Things were coming in line. Well, Stephen is our best numbers guy we got in the family. And boy, was he running some sheets and some spreadsheets. And every meeting with Dad, and not just us three, but our organization, everything had to have an ROI on it. It had to work. He wanted the team everybody said in the team meeting room that we built, like, how are they going to have a meeting with this and that up there? And we're like, well, we're building something for corporate sponsors, and we're going to build something where they can do presentations. And by the way, we'll have a team meeting in there, but everything you had to be able to sell and create revenue out of. Well, Stephen's running those sheets. Then he's trying to figure out how to say this costs this, when it really, I'm like, how is that allocated over there? It should be over here. Anyway, you ought to speak to your sheet. I couldn't follow the sheet.
Still can't.
And I still can't follow the sheet.
It was Jerry and Stephen language.
I said, there's an easier way to lay this out. And he goes, he won't buy in that way.
This is just the way to get it done. This is how we tell him. Like, oh, it's that sheet. Okay.
We were on a summer vacation, our whole family, And it was time to either do this or not do this. We'd been talking about it for, I don't know how long, 12 months, 14 months, however long it's been. And it was time to really start spending some money. But the city, as we all know this project, the city was very invested into making the Star come to fruition with us. And they were starting to fund their money. And I think one of the things you said starting the meeting with Jerry was, well, it's time to start giving the city back their money. And boy, that got a little quiet. And so I could tell Dad getting a little riled up, and Charlotte and I kind of eased on out.
Well, that was my point. I said, we got to decide. And I go, we're going to walk through all this. And Charlotte and Jerry both looked at me and said, you'll be fine with him. He goes, we'll let you and Jerry walk through this. And there they go. And I'm sitting there walking him through all
that had the real total. That had the real number.
I'll have your drink waiting on you. Come on back.
But it still all added up at the end, what we had to pay and what the city was going to pay, and then what our returns were going to be. Of course, they're sitting in here in different places, our top-notch revenue generators. Every time I'd go meet with him, I'd say, Chad, how much are we at on sponsorships? And he'd give me a number, and I said, I need 5 more.
Wow.
He goes, my gosh, 5 more. And I go, we can get it done. I'll help you. We'll get in there. We'll all chip in, and we'll get a few more sponsorships sold. So anyway, it was a great way to go about it, but that's how.
Was it?
I think it was. Look what we have.
It's become the model for all other teams to follow.
We were more invested in the Star than we did the stadium.
Absolutely.
And to do that all over again, when we started, he basically said, okay, this is great, y'all go do it, but you get no money.
No money.
Like no money coming from this. We have empty pockets.
By the end of it, though, he was
on.
Now he's
and everything.
smiling. Now he loves it.
Right.
All of it.
Well,
How many of you been to AT&T Stadium? Raise your hand, please. Okay, if you
great.
have not
Thank you.
been,
Thank you.
if you have, you've done some work on it in the off season. The club area is just fantastic. Looks brand new. Touches elegant. The people in there. I forget how big that venue is.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Charlotte, speak to it. That's your project.
Well, it is. It is my project. 3 million square feet of a project. It is very large. But for us, this last project to refurbish it has really been about. When we went through it the first time, we not that we had a different approach, but it was the first time we've ever built anything. And so where you put your money and where the focus was. Was one thing. A lot of it, as you know, went into the video board that kept growing and growing and growing. And other elements of that, and then you cut back on others to make things work. Well, this time around, it was like, hey, we can pick up the other now that we're sitting here and we know more of how this functions, and we were able to really emphasize that. And I think that's what you see out there. Plus, everything is brighter and it's, a lot more light intensive, but it really gives our partners a chance.
And the building
I think
opened.
one thing I would add, and you'll get a kick out of this, but it was a little bit the same deal as the Star on why we were spending this money, on something that wasn't necessarily right away a revenue generator, but we were trying to get it done for the FIFA World Cup as part of our bid. Hey, we're going to have brand new renovated suites and that type of thing. Well, we start getting great feedback. Charlotte and her team had put together the beautiful the product in terms of our suites and our clubs. And they go, boy, we just can't believe you're doing this for us, this one gentleman said. He calls me back 2 days later and said, I take that back about how sweet y'all are. He goes, I just read my suite contract, and it's due 2 years after the World Cup. You're working on that extension, aren't you?
Always sell it. Right? Yeah.
Always figured.
And you have, I believe, 8 World Cup matches, I believe?
Yes.
So,
Hats off to our
8
management
like Super
team.
Bowls in a month period in 26. So that venue is going to get a lot of action. But if you haven't gone, you have to go. It's unbelievable. Real quick, we're about 12 minutes left. Let's go around. Give one story in sports business that you're keeping your eye on that's interesting to you, that the audience would learn from. Anybody, jump ball.
You want to take? Well, I think for us, a lot of focus right now is on sports betting, legalizing sports betting. That is, I actually serve on that committee with the NFL. And for us here in Texas, as many of you, I'm not sure how many are from Texas, it is not legal in Texas. So we have had a concentrated effort trying to push that forward. But from that terms, I think it's hard. When you're talking to politicians, they assume that you want sports betting because you're trying to make money off the bet. That's certainly far from the truth. For us, it's really about the avidity of fandom. And, we saw this bump in avidity and stickiness of our fans when we had fantasy football, because everybody wanted to see every game, not just the team that they rooted for. And, you magnify that, it becomes really, quite an additive effort when people are leveraging bets that either are, just parlays, whatever they are, but they want to follow everything and they want to stay in and engage to the last second of the game in every game. And to have that kind of interest for our fans across the sport is really significant for us as a league standpoint, and then translates into other things, which obviously we all know about from sponsorship and et cetera. But it's certainly a hot topic for us.
A work in progress here in Texas,
Work in
right?
progress here in Texas.
Yep. Stephen?
To me, it's the evolution of our content. I mean, obviously, we're where we are today because of our television partners and our revenue sharing model the league has, our deal we have with the union, but it all comes down at the end of the day to what makes it all successful is our content. And certainly we're evolving. I mentioned earlier the word disruption. The linear TV guys, who are wonderful partners, have their hands full. One great thing about our league in the NFL is it still is the one piece of content that can re-aggregate all the eyeballs back to linear TV and have everybody watch. Now, that's not going to continue to happen because we have this young group of people that are out there and they want to stream. They want to go over the top. By the way, they want all the shoulder programming that goes with it. We've been working on what I think is going to be an amazing docuseries. Charlotte's worked extra hard on it with Netflix and Skydance. But, to me, this is going to be the storyline going forward, is how do we continue to keep this young generation of people. I think we got people like are sitting right up here on this panel right now. But that 18 to 28, that 18 to 30, there's no question they consume their content, the way you present their your content to them. I serve as co-chairman of the competition committee, and we're constantly having to make sure, that we want to keep the sanctity of the game. That's what brought us here. But we also have to do some things that allow technology and all the things that can make the game even more conducive to younger people, make it even a better game as we go forward. We want to keep, as I said, the sanctity, but you also got to really keep in mind as we move forward, how people are going to consume that content, what you can do to make it even, if you will, more spicier, have people want to do more. And then, of course, that grows the pie. And the players should be very interested. The players have their own platforms now. They're more apt to cooperate than they ever were because they understand that eyeballs and people loving our game and them doing things the right way, both on and off the field, are big, big deals. But to me, it's going to be really, very intriguing to see how all this plays out. And it'll play out over a long period of time. This isn't going to happen overnight. And, there's still streaming's way behind people turning to Fox or turning to ABC or turning to any one of our wonderful partners we have to turn on the game and watch a game day the way we present it today. It's going to continue to evolve, and the way these kids watch it, I've gotten to where even I'll watch certain things on my phone and learning to operate it. Have to ask a lot of people how to do it, but I get there.
Well, I just would add to that, Abe, that everybody in this room knows in sports, we're in the entertainment business. Everybody knows that. Back going to when Jerry first bought the team and talking with Tex Schramm, and Tex Schramm said to Jerry, just always know that you can't turn this into a studio game, that you really got to think through and make sure that it's the people and those eyeballs that Stephen just walked through and how important all that is and how technology is only spreading that universe that can get that content in front of them. But what's really an emphasis that we can't ever lose our eye on the ball of, and that is what's going on in the game and what's going on in that stadium, because that is what everyone who's sitting there watching it I think in the NFL, only 7% of all NFL fans have ever actually been in the stadium. They're fans outside of the stadium itself. But if that stadium's empty, or if that stadium's a studio, we got a little dose of that with some of the things, some of the leagues that did play in a studio during COVID. And of course, you got to feel that didn't come across real well. Boy, people want to see those eyeballs. People want to see that action in the stadium. But we have always lived by that. I think, telling the story of how we were doing machinations to see how the star would evolve, I think as far as the future, I think you always got to know it's not real obvious what it might be. When we first got involved with the team, it was not in vogue to be in the stadium business. But Jerry, Dad, had to get in the stadium business because he had a stadium, and he had to figure out how to make it work. When we first started looking at the star, you could say, does that work? What's the risk in that? Well, now as we have finished it and completed it and you look at it, you say, boy, of course it worked. But boy, when it hadn't been done before, you don't know.
Right.
And so I'd say as far as going forward, that I would challenge this room, challenge our organization, should challenge ourselves as we look in the mirror of what is not happening that we need to be doing, because it's not always so obvious. But boy, take advantage of technology, because we know that's changing a lot of how we do it. But I think that's what excites me about what is out there that hadn't been thought of, that no one's talking about. And hopefully we're part of doing that with them.
It's one of the best things about having AT&T as a partner. I mean, they're very advanced, and our DAS system, I think we got the capacity to do twice what we can actually let people in the stadium. We can do double and have it done quickly, and it's because AT&T is committed to having the very best at AT&T Stadium. And you can have beautiful suites and beautiful clubs and great seats, but people still want to consume their content while they're at our football game, and they want to check on their fantasy football team. Yeah. They want to see all the different things that are offered to our fans. And we got QR codes, I think, Charlotte, on every seat or something.
Yeah,
so it's amazing how the way our fans take in the content now. Amazing, all the things that you got to keep up with to keep your fans happy.
Well, and I think the basic philosophy actually hasn't changed since the day that we walked in the door, in terms of like building who we are. And that is remembering like 5 really important things. Is that, we knew when we bought the team that this team was really about the team, the brand, the star, the culture of the team. It was about tradition. That's what got us here, that we stand on the shoulders of those who came before us so we can reach new heights. It's about Tom Landry and Bob Lilly and Roger Staubach as much as it is about Dak and CD. Tradition, we can't forget that, but you can't stay in the tradition, or you become generational and then you become nostalgic. So you have to figure out ways to remain relevant. So you have to keep an eye on the tradition while you find a way to remain relevant. The second is that we're about competition. Don't ever forget, it's about the game. Who won on Sunday? That's really all that your fans really care about. The rest is just additive to that. But we are the greatest reality show on television. You can't fake it, you can't script it, you can't predict it. And every Sunday, Thursday, Friday, we're all over the place, that you are gonna get the greatest piece of content ever, because you just don't know what will happen. Don't turn your TV off at the last minute like we did last night.
Like last night.
Yay! So it is about competition. Don't ever forget it. Tradition, competition. It is also about entertainment. We are asking people, many of them for their last entertainment dollar, to come out and to be a part of something special. We're trying to create an experience that they want to share with others. They can't replicate it on their lazy boy. They want to be a part of the energy and the enthusiasm that's going on. So how do we make sure that that entertainment is new, is exciting, and is shareable? The other thing is that it is about business. At the end of the day, there has to be enough left to go around again and make that business operation work, but your fans don't want to hear about it. So we have to figure out how to build a stadium, how to build a star, how to pay for everything, and not let Jerry know what we spent. And at the same time, we got to make sure there's some left over to go create something new at the end of the day. And after that, it's about innovation. And what that innovation is, whether it was like slow in the making over the last 30 years of how does technology, stadium advancement, everything impact it, to things that are happening every day on a media forefront, that innovation will never change, and we have to continue continue to make sure that we know what is that next thing. And sometimes we don't know till you're in the middle of it, and then you have to have the flexibility and the finances to jump in and go deep.
Mm-hmm. And do you want to can you give anybody heads up on the latest on the Netflix series? It's 10 parts?
Well, we think so. We are dying to find out, but we are excited. We know that will happen it'll drop right at the end of the season. And
it's going to drop at the end of this season?
That's what we understand.
Wow.
That is what we understand. They can change on us anytime they want to, clearly.
Feedback.
But Netflix has been an amazing partner. They're super excited about this, and goodness knows Jerry's been talking a lot on it, so we'll see what we've got.
Well, a couple things as we end. When we planned this program, last night with their father and today's session with the 3 siblings was the goal of SBJ. It really was. And to have both of them happen, we really greatly appreciate it. Number 2, I've been around this family for a long time, and one thing that sticks with me, they are about family. And between your mom, your dad, your children, grandchildren, it's just it's all about the family. And I see a lot of things in the sports industry, but your mom and dad certainly know how to raise kids. And so congratulations. So great seeing you here.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Be well.
Thank y'all.
Thanks for listening to SBJ's On Stage. If you enjoyed this mix of insight and personality from the Jones siblings, be sure to subscribe, leave us a review, and share with anyone who appreciates leadership lessons delivered with authenticity and a good dose of humor. Here's something to bring back to your team. What does it take to lead with both legacy and innovation? How do you keep things aligned and fun when the stakes are high? Send me your thoughts at tbloom@sportsbusinessjournal.com. We'll be back next week with another exclusive conversation from a leader shaping the future of sports. Until then, stay tuned and stay ahead. This is On Stage.